Good morning. Welcome to the final academic week for the school year. This is going to be week number 6, lesson number 11 for The Call of the Wild by Jack London. If you guys remember, we only had a handful of pages left until the end, so we're going to go ahead and read most of those right here, if not all of them. And I think actually we'll try and finish it today. And then the homework assignment is going to be a 2-part assignment. So you'll be able to start it today. It'll be due this weekend sometime because grades are due on Monday. And and so I'll talk to you about that at the end of the video. But last we left off, if you guys remember, Buck was really growing close to the wild. He felt unbelievably free, and he started to hear calls from the wilderness as he and John Thornton and the group are traveling into places that are more or less unknown. Only a couple of people have been there, but they haven't been, civilized at all. They're still completely wide open wild. We're on page 78 in my book. If you want to follow along, go ahead and click the link that's in the video description right below. That link will take you to the book on your web browser. It's completely free. It opens right up. You just click it. Boom, there it is. And then you can press Control F and type in... we'll go back to this part. Type in, "One night he sprang from sleep with a start, comma." Okay, that should take you pretty far into the book, and that's where we're going to start reading today, and we're going to go as best we can until the very end. All right. One night he sprang from sleep with a start, eager-eyed, nostrils quivering and scenting, his mane bristling in recurrent waves. From the forest came the call, or one note of it, for the call was many-noted, distinct and definite as never before, a long-drawn howl, like yet unlike any noise made by a husky dog, and he knew it in the old familiar way as a sound heard before. He sprang through the sleeping camp and in swift silence dashed through the woods. As he drew closer to the cry, he went more slowly, with caution in every movement, till he came to an open place among the trees, and looking out, saw, erect on haunches, with nose pointed toward the sky, a long, lean timber wolf. All right, so Buck has not encountered a timber wolf yet, as far as I know. He's encountered huskies, and he's encountered some form of wolfish dogs, like huskies, that are kind of running around the wild in the Yukon and starving to death. But this is a timber wolf. I mean, this is a wolf, right? Something that's completely wild. Man hasn't gotten there yet, so the timber wolves still roam free as probably one of the apex predators. Buck had made no noise, yet it ceased from its howling and tried to sense his presence. Buck stalked into the open, half crouching, body gathered compactly together, tail straight and stiff, feet falling with unwanted care. Every movement advertised commingled threatening and overture of friendliness. It was the menacing truce that marks the meaning of wild beasts that prey. But the wolf fled at sight of him. He followed with wild leapings into a frenzy to overtake. He ran him into a blind channel in the bed of a creek where a timber jam barred the way. The wolf whirled about, pivoting on its hind legs after the fashion of Joe and all cornered husky dogs, snarling and bristling, clipping his teeth together in a continuous and rapid succession of snaps. Buck did not attack, but circled him about and hedged him in with friendly advances. The wolf was suspicious and afraid, for Buck made 3 of him in weight. So this is a really big wolf, but guys, Buck is still a massive dog. I mean, it's 150 pounds. That's almost as much as Mr. Brooks weighs, okay? And I'm 6 feet tall, so Buck is a big dog, okay? So Buck made 3 of him in weight, while his head barely reached Buck's shoulder. Watching his chance, he darted away, and the chase was resumed. Time and again he was cornered, and the thing repeated. Though he was in poor condition, or Buck could not so easily have overtaken him. He would run till Buck's head was even with his flank, when he would whirl around at bay, only to dash away again at the first opportunity. But in the end, Buck's pertinacity was rewarded. For the wolf, finding that no harm was intended, finally sniffed noses with him. So they did that thing the dogs do where they're like, and they sniff each other, little friends. Okay. Then they became friendly and played about in the nervous, half-coy way with which fierce beasts belie their fierceness. After some time of this, the wolf started off at an easy lope in a manner that plainly showed he was going somewhere. He made it clear to Buck that he was to come, and they ran side by side through the somber twilight, straight up the creek bed into the gorge from which it issued, and across the bleak divide where it took its rise. On the opposite slope of the watershed, they came down into a level country where there were great stretches of forest and many streams, and through these great stretches they ran steadily, hour after hour, the sun rising higher and the day growing warmer. Buck was wildly glad. He knew how he was at last answering the call, running by the side of his wood brother toward the place from where the call surely came. Old memories were coming upon him fast, and he was stirring to them as of old he stirred to the realities of which they were the shadows. He had done this thing before, somewhere in that other and dimly remembered world, and he was doing it again, now, running free in the open, the unpacked earth underfoot, the wide sky overhead. So this is Buck's final metamorphosis into the wild animal that he's supposed to be. And he's feeling within himself the instinct and the ancestral memory that's built into his DNA as a dog, which was innately a wild animal, right? They stopped by a running stream to drink, and stopping, Buck remembered John Thornton. He sat down. The wolf started on toward the place from where the call surely came, then returned to him, sniffing noses and making actions as though to encourage Buck. But Buck turned about and started slowly on the back track. For the better part of an hour, the wild brother ran by his side, whining softly. Then he sat down, pointed his nose upward, and howled. It was a mournful howl, and as Buck held steadily on his way, he heard it grow faint and fainter until it was lost in the distance. John Thornton was eating dinner when Buck dashed into camp and sprang upon him in a frenzy of affection, overturning him, scrambling upon him, licking his face, biting his hand, playing the general Tom Fool, as John Thornton characterized it, while he shook back and forth, and cursed him lovingly. For 2 days and nights, Buck never left camp, never let Thornton out of his sight. He followed him about at his work, watched him while he ate, saw him into his blankets at night, and out of them in the morning even. But after 2 days, the call in the forest began to sound more imperiously than ever. Buck's restlessness came back on him, and he was haunted by recollections of the wild brother, and of the smiling land beyond the divide, and the run side by side through the wide forest stretches. Once again he took to wandering in the woods, but the wild brother came no more, and though he listened through long vigils, the mournful howl was never raised. He began to sleep out at night, staying away from camp for days at a time, and once he crossed the divide at the head of the creek and went down into the land of the timber and streams. There he wandered for a week, seeking vainly for a fresh sign of the wild brother, killing his meat as he traveled, and traveling with the long, easy lope that seems never to tire. He fished for salmon in a broad stream that emptied somewhere into the sea, and by this stream he killed a large black bear, blinded by mosquitoes while likewise fishing, and raging through the forest helpless and terrible. Even so, it was a hard fight, and it aroused the last latent remnants of Buck's ferocity. And 2 days later, when he returned to his kill and found a dozen wolverines quarreling over the spoil, he scattered them like chaff, and those that fled left 2 behind who would quarrel no more. The blood-longing became stronger than ever before. He was a killer, a thing that preyed, living on the things that lived, unaided, alone, by virtue of his own strength and prowess, surviving triumphantly in a hostile environment where only the strong survived. That's a beautiful line. If you do happen to write an essay about Buck's inner wild nature, or even about the inner wild nature in all of us, whether we're dogs or not, because you guys, humans too, if we're taking the Darwinian understanding of human evolution, which is what Jack London would have proposed most likely, then we're to understand that humans too were once wild animals. And if that's the case, then this whole this whole call to the wild, this instinctual, what's the word I'm looking for? Like being seduced, right? This instinctual seduction to a life of living in the wilderness. That doesn't just apply to Buck and dogs like Buck. That would seemingly apply to us as human beings as well. And this line right here, I think, is the epitome of that final understanding, right? He was a killer, a thing that preyed, living on the things that lived, unaided, alone, by virtue of his own strength and prowess, surviving triumphantly in a hostile environment where only the strong survived. I mean, that's Buck's truest nature right there. Because of all this, he became possessed of a great pride in himself, which communicated itself like a contagion to his physical being. It advertised itself in all his movements, was apparently in the play of every muscle, spoke plainly as speech in the way he carried himself, and made his glorious furry coat, if anything, more glorious. But for the stray brown on his muzzle and above his eyes, and for the splash of white hair that ran midmost down his chest, he might well have been mistaken for a gigantic wolf himself, larger than the largest of the breed. From his St. Bernard father he had inherited size and weight, but it was his shepherd mother who had given shape to that size and weight. His muzzle was the long wolf muzzle, save that it was larger than the muzzle of any wolf, and his head, somewhat broader, was the wolf head on a massive scale. So Buck, you guys, he's the main dog. I mean, Buck is the dog, man. And remember, he pulled 1,000 pounds of flour in the ice when the sled was iced down. I mean, he's the dog, whether it's in civilization or that weird transition of civilization in the Yukon or in the complete wilderness. Buck's the dog. His cunning was wolf cunning and wild cunning. His intelligence, shepherd intelligence, and St. Bernard intelligence. And all this, plus an experience gained in the fiercest of schools, made him as formidable a creature as any that roamed the wild. A carnivorous animal, living on a straight meat diet, he was in full flower at the high tide of his life, overspilling with vigor and virility. When Thornton passed a caressing hand along his back, a snapping and crackling followed the hand, each hair discharging its pent magnetism at the contact. Every part, brain and body, nerve tissue and fiber, was keyed to the most exquisite pitch, and between all the parts there was a perfect equilibrium or adjustment. To sights and sounds and events which required action, he responded with lightning-like rapidity. Quickly as a husky dog could leap to defend from attack or to attack, he could leap twice as quickly. He saw the movement or heard the sound and responded in less time than another dog required to compass the mere seeing or hearing. He perceived and determined and responded all in the same instant. In point of fact, the three actions of perceiving, determining, and responding were sequential, but so infinitesimal were the intervals of time between them that they appeared simultaneous. His muscles were surcharged with vitality and snapped into place sharply, like steel springs. Life streamed through him in splendid flood, glad and rampant, until it seemed that it would burst him asunder in sheer ecstasy and pour forth generously over the world. "Never was there such a dog," said John Thornton one day, as the partners watched Buck marching out of camp. "When he was made, the mold broke," said Pete. "Py Jingo, I think so myself," Hans affirmed. They saw him marching out of camp, but they did not see the instant and terrible transformation which took place as soon as he was within the secrecy of the forest. He no longer marched. At once he became a thing of the wild, stealing along softly, cat-footed, passing shadow that appeared and disappeared among the shadows. He knew how to take advantage of every cover, to crawl in his belly like a snake, and like a snake to leap and strike. He could take a ptarmigan from its nest, kill a rabbit as it slept, and snap in midair the little chipmunks fleeing a second too late for the trees. Fish in open pools were not too quick for him, nor were beaver mending their dams too wary. He killed to eat, not from wantonness, but he preferred to eat what he killed himself. So a lurking humor ran through his deeds, and it was his delight to steal upon the squirrels, and when he had all but had them, to let them go, chattering in mortal fear to the treetops. Buck is asserting his dominance in the forest, right? It would seem that the entire ecosystem that is surrounding him is at his beck and call. Buck is the apex predator. He even took down a black bear. I mean, it was a hard fight, but bears are crazy. Buck had no problem. He took him down. As the fall of the year came on, the moose appeared in a greater abundance, moving slowly down to meet the winter in the lower and less rigorous valleys. Buck had already dragged down a stray part-grown calf, but he wished strongly for larger and more formidable quarry, and he came upon it one day on the divide at the head of the creek. A band of 20 moose had crossed over from the land of streams and timber, and chief among them was a great bull. He was in a savage temper, and standing over 6 feet from the ground was as formidable an antagonist as even Buck could desire. Back and forth the bull tossed his great palmated antlers, branching to 14 points and embracing 7 feet within the tips. His small eyes burned with a vicious and bitter light, while he roared with fury at the sight of Buck. Alright guys, there's a few pages left, and actually I'm going to save it for next time. We will finish the book on Thursday, but I want you guys to begin your homework assignment now. So the homework assignment, you guys, and it's a 2-part assignment, so we'll finish the book on Thursday, but you'll have the same thing to finish that I'm assigning today. And that is for you to begin writing a 3-paragraph essay about, you have a few options. One, you can write the essay about a major theme in the novel. There are themes like freedom, a call to wilderness, self-identity, conflict or the result of conflict, bravery, perseverance, persistence, hard work, determination, etc., etc., etc. These are all major themes in the book. And what I mean by a theme is that it's an idea that we see presented multiple times throughout the story. So more than once, that idea of determination is talked about. Buck is determined in multiple points. Other dogs are determined. Some of the humans are determined. And you can write an essay about determination. So any theme you want to choose, 3 paragraphs. The second option is that you can choose to write about the characterization of Buck in 3 paragraphs. This is the easier option. So for those of you who are looking to advance at the end of the year, looking to step into the role of being ready for more difficult stuff in next year's curriculum, I would love for you to try the first option and work on writing a 3-paragraph essay about theme. For those of you who are just trying to continue gathering the skills of writing an essay, you don't want to work on too arduous of metaphysical material to think about, then the characterization essay is right up your alley. It's still difficult. It's just a little easier because what you're going to be doing is writing about the 3 stages of Buck's journey, okay? Each paragraph, remember it's a 3-paragraph essay, each paragraph will describe one of the stages of Buck's journey. So maybe the beginning, whatever you consider the middle to be, and whatever you consider the end to be. And you're not just talking about the plot of his journey, but how did Buck evolve or not evolve as a character throughout the story. Okay, you'll make a case for his growth or his stagnation, or maybe he has a decline in growth, whatever it is that you think. You'll make a case for that in your essay. And finally, the third option is the most difficult option. It's for you to take either of the first 2 options and elevate them to a higher level of analysis. So instead of just writing about a theme in the book, or instead of just writing about the characterization of Buck, you're going to write about one of those things and explain how it's relevant to the real world. Okay, so if you choose a theme like determination, we talked about earlier, or free will, or bravery, or the call of the wild itself, right? Not just the titular, not just the title, but the titular meaning. If you take that theme, you'll explain it and explain how we, as human beings in the real world, experience that theme. Similarly, if you decide to do characterization in Buck's character growth or stagnation or decline or whatever throughout the book, you'll also take that and parallel it with maybe the character growth, stagnation, or decline in your own life, maybe humans throughout history, something that relates the call of the wild and the idea in there to our real world. Because guys, I want to remind you, that is the reason that we read literature and that we focus on it. It's not just to enjoy it, and it's not just to pick it apart and think about certain symbols or whatever. It's ultimately to find a better understanding of the world around us and of the people around us. So those are your 3 options. If you want to see them again, go ahead and just rewind the video, and if you have any questions, you can pop into my Zoom calls Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 8:30 to 9 a.m. or 2 to 2:30 p.m. You can also send me a brief email asking any questions, and I'll make sure that I'm punctual in getting back to you so that you can start working on that essay. And then on Thursday, we'll finish the book, and maybe I'll give you a few tips for finishing up your essay. And then the essays will be due this weekend, okay, because grades are due on Monday. So I think that's pretty much it for today. I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and I'll see you on Zoom soon, or I'll see you in my email inbox soon, or I will see you never. No, I'm just kidding. I'll see you on Zoom. All right, guys. Have a good one. Later.